the men and women on the front line, risking their lives to keep New York safe. Keep you safe.
It's hard to find anyone who can forget that scene in the Daredevil Born Again finale. The police commissioner who'd been challenging Fisk all season finally stands up to him. Seconds later, Kingpin grabs him and crushes his skull with his bare hands.
This is a circus. We will keep this city safe.
And we then see everything. The gore, the blood spattering, we hear the sickening crunch of bone. Basically, Disney and Marvel both decided to hold nothing back. But you know what really terrifies me? That for a split second, I understood exactly why he did it.
Any questions? Good.
How does an actor make us empathize with a monster? What dark places must Vincent D'Onofrio visit within himself to make us believe this massive man who crushes skulls in car doors is somehow human? In this video, we're going to be doing a deep dive into the brilliance behind D'Onofrio's Kingpin, from Full Metal Jacket's broken soldier to Daredevil's complex villain. Because the most frightening bad guys aren't the ones who seem inhuman, they're the ones who make us question our own capacity for darkness. Let's get into it. To understand D'Onofrio's unique gift for portraying psychological breakdown, we need to go back to where it all began, and that's Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket. In 1987, D'Onofrio burst onto the scene as Private Leonard Gomer Pyle Lawrence, a chubby, awkward Marine recruit who becomes the target of relentless abuse. Now, for this role, D'Onofrio famously gained 70 pounds and transformed his entire physicality, going from a fit young actor to someone barely recognizable.
And he said, I'm in England, I'm doing this movie with Stanley Kubrick. I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's not a bad name to drop right there.
Yeah. And he said, there's a part available, and we don't know what it is, but you should probably audition for it because we're going to shoot that later. We're going to shoot this one section first. And I thought, okay, and so he gave me this address, and I made a tape, and then Stanley spoke to me and gave me some words to send out, and I sent those out. And the next thing you know, he says, so you'd have to gain like some weight to come out to play this part, or would you be into doing that? And well, at first we thought 20 or 30 pounds, but I just looked like I could kick everybody's butt. Mm-hmm. So it ended up to be about 70 pounds before I started looking weak.
What makes this performance so haunting is how D'Onofrio takes a step by excruciating step through a man's psychological disintegration. We watch as the initially gentle Pyle endures humiliation, violence, and isolation until something fundamental breaks inside him. The vacant stare, the unsettling smile, the rhythmic chanting as he loads his rifle in the bathroom. By the time he delivers the chilling line, "What is your major malfunction?"
What is your major malfunction, numbnuts? Didn't Mommy and Daddy show you enough attention when you were a child?
With that empty smile, we've witnessed something rare in film: the complete transformation of a human being into something else entirely. And speaking of transformations, this early role established what would become D'Onofrio's signature: an uncanny ability to inhabit characters who live on the psychological edge, who struggle with their very humanity. And nowhere is this talent more evident than in his portrayal of Wilson Fisk. When Netflix announced their Daredevil series in 2015, comic fans were pretty skeptical. After all, the last attempt at bringing the character to screen gave us Colin Farrell chewing scenery as Bullseye, and a Kingpin who felt more like a generic mob boss than the complex villain from the comics. Then Vincent D'Onofrio appeared on screen, and everything changed. Vincent's Kingpin was physically imposing, but that's not really what makes him so scary. Though at 6'4", D'Onofrio certainly brings the necessary stature. What makes his portrayal truly revolutionary is the psychological depth. This isn't a cackling supervillain twirling his mustache. This is a deeply damaged human being who believes with every fiber of his being that he's the hero of his own story. D'Onofrio builds Fisk from the inside out. Things like the awkward, halting speech pattern that suggests someone who grew up isolated.
It makes me feel alone.
The barely contained rage that bubbles beneath every interaction.
Get out.
Sir, if there's anything I can bring...
Get out!
The childlike vulnerability when he's with Vanessa.
Yes, I was actually wondering if you cared to join me for dinner.
I'm the only one working here tonight.
Another time, then.
These aren't mere acting choices done for the hell of it. They're windows into a fractured psyche. In one of the series' most pivotal scenes, Fisk tells the story of the Good Samaritan, basically taking a biblical parable and twisting it to justify his own brutality. D'Onofrio delivers this monologue with such conviction that, for a moment, we almost understand his warped perspective. That's the genius of the performance. He makes us momentarily complicit in Fisk's madness. And then there's the violence. When Kingpin takes action, D'Onofrio doesn't play it like a choreographed fight scene. He makes it primal, animalistic. Who can forget the car door scene? I mean, sure, it's violent, merciless, and super scary, but that's not what makes it so shocking. It's the fact that D'Onofrio made us believe in the complete psychological break that would drive a man to commit such an act. But here's what truly separates D'Onofrio's Kingpin from other comic book villains. It's one word, really, and that's restraint. He understands that true power is silent. And come to think about it, some of his most terrifying moments are his quietest, when the mask of civility slips just enough for us to glimpse the monster beneath. So what exactly is D'Onofrio doing that makes his portrayal so compelling? How does an actor access this level of psychological intensity? For starters, D'Onofrio is known for his immersive approach to characters, which means he inhabits his characters completely. And Kingpin is no different. He develops specific physicalities, things like the way Fisk holds his body with a mixture of power and discomfort, how he tilts his head when listening, and the deliberate way he adjusts his cufflinks before unleashing violence. Then there's his vocal performance. D'Onofrio gave Fisk a soft, almost gentle way of speaking that creates a disturbing contrast with his physical presence.
I always thought that I was the Samaritan in that story. It's funny, isn't it? How even the best of men can be deceived by their true nature.
It's as though his voice is constantly fighting to contain something monstrous just below the surface. This technique creates tension in every scene, and we're left always waiting for the facade to crack. But perhaps most importantly, D'Onofrio deeply understands that great villains never see themselves as villains. In interviews, he's discussed approaching Fisk as a child trapped inside a massive body, someone whose emotional development was stunted by trauma, and it's this insight that gives his Kingpin a frightening authenticity. He's not evil for evil's sake, he's a damaged soul who believes he's doing what's necessary. And that, frankly, is far more terrifying than any mustache-twirling bad guy could ever be. But what about our hero? What about Daredevil himself? That's where things get really interesting, because one of the brilliant aspects of the Netflix Daredevil series is how it constantly questions the line between hero and villain. Matt Murdock may wear the horns of justice, but he's carrying demons just as dark as Fisk's. Remember the scene where Daredevil pushes Bullseye off a bell tower?
Why?
Or when he tortures criminals for information? These aren't the actions of a squeaky clean superhero, are they? They're the choices of a man plagued by the same moral questions as his nemesis. Questions like, how far is too far? What separates justice from vengeance? And then there's the Punisher, aka Frank Castle, who enters the story as an even darker reflection of both Daredevil and Kingpin. Here's a man who, like Fisk, believes his brutal methods are justified. The difference? We're supposed to root for him, despite the body count he leaves behind. This moral ambiguity is what makes the Netflix Daredevil universe amazingly interesting. There are no pure heroes or villains, just damaged people trying to remake the world in their vision. And at the center of it all is D'Onofrio's Kingpin, a perfect embodiment of the thin line between righteousness and madness. And then Daredevil Born Again was announced, and one question in particular absolutely dominated fan discussions. Would Vincent D'Onofrio return as Kingpin? The collective sigh of relief when his casting was confirmed speaks volumes about how definitively he claimed this role. His brief appearance in Hawkeye showed us a Kingpin who had lost everything but none of his menace. If anything, he seemed more dangerous, kind of like a wounded animal with nothing left to lose. This evolution sets the stage for what promises to be an even more complex portrayal in Born Again. This continuation is so exciting because we get the opportunity to explore Fisk's psychology even further. A man who once had a vision for saving his city, who found love with Vanessa, who built an empire, now stripped of everything. How does someone rebuild from that? What new justifications will he create for his actions? If D'Onofrio's track record is any indication, we can expect a performance that will once again blur the lines between monster and man, and will make us question our own capacity for darkness. Vincent D'Onofrio once said in an interview, "I've always approached playing villains as if they're good guys in their own minds." The simple philosophy is exactly why his Kingpin is so disturbingly effective. He doesn't play Fisk as evil, he plays him as righteous. And in doing so, he forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature. From Private Pyle's bathroom breakdown to Kingpin smashing a man's head with a car door, D'Onofrio has mastered the art of portraying psychological extremity in ways that feel unnervingly real. He doesn't ask us to hate his monsters, he asks us to understand them. And as we look forward to Daredevil Born Again, one thing is certain: whenever Vincent D'Onofrio leans against a wall, breathing heavily, his hands covered in someone else's blood, we won't just be seeing another comic book bad guy having a moment. We'll be witnessing the continuation of one of the most psychologically complex villain portrayals ever brought to screen, because that's the true art of playing monsters, making us see the human beneath the horror, and perhaps catching uncomfortable glimpses of ourselves along the way. As we wrap up, let me ask you this. If the line between hero and villain is simply a matter of perspective, which side of that line are you on? And how many steps would it take to cross it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the characters that keep us up at night.